Well, hello everybody. Here we are. Today I am going to talk about the history of Phish in Seattle. While it's not a long and rich history, similar to Boulder, a city where I would have thought maybe there was more going on for the band, and then in fact, turns out not a lot going on. I'll just hit some of the highlights, maybe some hidden goodies that were out there, some of the better shows, some of the weaker shows, things of this nature. So let's just start right at the very beginning of their history in Boulder. October 11th, 1991, April 23rd, 1992 are their first two trips in there. And the notes I wrote down, not much at all for these two shows. October 11th, 91, April 23rd, 92, their first two visits to Seattle. Some shenanigans, and not that every song of both shows was just a complete waste of time. I went right ahead, went right for the stuff that I thought, okay, well, I'll certainly like this song. It was just okay. And then, one of the highlights might have been like a possum with a bunch of teases. There was some secret language stuff, some signals, So even the shenanigans really weren't off the charts fun. And then it's 91, 92, so there wasn't going to be a whole lot of exploring and the jamming. And the shows kind of came and went and really aren't noteworthy at all. Very low rated on .net as well, for what that's worth. And then we move on to April 5th, 1993. Things start to get a little bit better. 93, one of my favorite years in the band's history. Now, this one did, of the three shows at this point, this one certainly had the best set list. I think there was a Fluffhead snuck in there on us, making its debut. You enjoy myself a lot of times showing up in these shows, but really not like an all-timer at this point. And then even this show, which at April 5th, 1993 in Seattle, which was at this point, I thought, going to be the most promising show, yet again, another fairly low-rated show by fans. And really, it kind of fizzled at the end. The first two-thirds of the show, pretty strong. Maybe even, definitely more than the first half of the show. But then you get into Fishman on the Vacuum and just lots of goofy stuff that we didn't really sign up for, It's not why we're here. All right, so then we get to August 25th, 1993. Certainly August 93, the band was completely on fire, and this show was no different. This was the first of two really, really good shows. Maybe even, dare I say, great shows. Maybe 5-star shows. Probably give this one like an 8.5 out of 10, perhaps. Fanzon.net giving it a 4.3. And I do not have a recap of this one on my channel, surprisingly, something that I may have to fix. So then let's not skip all the way to the great show in 1996, because before that there was May 21st, 1994. And again, for a time period, that was just a complete smoke show for the band. This show is probably a little bit underrated by fans on .net. There was a Harry Hood in there, a completely overlooked and forgotten Harry Hood by most of us. But it was certainly the one of the first hidden gems that I uncovered digging through this Seattle stuff. So the May 21st, 94 Hood from Seattle, other than the entire, really, 8/25/93 show, this one here in May of 94 in Seattle, this Hood, certainly worth a listen if you do not remember that one. And then, very controversial trip, 2-night trip in 1995. Both shows pretty bad. Second show even worse than the first. Somehow, I didn't even know I would have ever done this. At a previous trip to .net, I must have listened to this show at one point. I gave it a 1-star rating on .net. I didn't even know I'd ever dished out a 1-star on .net. Turns out, October 3rd, 1995 was so bad, I gave it a 1. I don't even remember listening to it. But then the first night, October 2nd, 1995, while, again, it had a fairly low rating, it did have a pretty solid set list, according to me, in my opinion anyhow, songs that I like. It did have some great moments, and one of them being, much like the Harry Hood from 94, I would say this Slave to the Traffic Light is nearly a must-hear. If they're going to write a book at some point about Slave to the Traffic Light, this one here, October 2nd, 95 in Seattle, would certainly get a mention. Right as it's like the song's kind of cooling off and going into a nice jam, Fishman just with a very, very faint use of the vacuum and Slave to the Traffic Light. And it was really good, too. It worked. Like, not that they need to do that every time or anything, but it just really kind of set the tone for how the jam was going to go, and certainly worth giving a shot. October 2nd, 1995, the Slave to the Traffic Light in Seattle. So far we are through what, 6, 7 shows, and not a lot. Only one of the shows really worth checking out. A very strong hood and a very strong slave to the traffic light. So now we get to 1996, probably my favorite show of the Seattle shows. There is already a recap on this channel of this show. I will include that down in the description below. And yeah, this was a lot of good stuff here. I think most fans probably would agree, probably know this show. And then for some reason, they did not return for nearly 20 years. They waited all the way until the fall of 2014. Again, somewhat of a dud of a show, although there was a Light Cities that was really kind of bumped the show up. Went from being like maybe a bad show to just like an okay show. Another Seattle show that, like, overall show not that great, but did have some really strong moments. Kind of like that first night in '95. So this was only a one-nighter in '96, a one-nighter in 2014, and then they did go back for 2 shows in 2023. One of which I did go back and recap. The only run of Phish shows, really, since I started this. I've missed a show here and there, like a single night, maybe I missed, but had never missed an entire run of shows up until April of 2023. And yes, I did recap one of those shows after the fact. I will include a link to that also in the description. But really, I don't even want to talk about those shows. I don't want to revisit that time, and we will just call that the end of the Phish history in Seattle. So to look back, yes, that Harry Hood from '94, give that a listen. The Slave to the Traffic Light from '95. If you don't know the show from November of '96, that one was great. And then also August of '93. Pretty much every show was great in August of '93. This one being no different. All right, well, that about does it. Much like Boulder, not a long storied history. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. Some highlights, some lowlights. Some good, some bad, a little bit of this. All right, guys, boom, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We're 3 weeks away from some live shows, finally. Getting rough. Boom. Thank you. I don't know what happened. Why I flamed? I still don't know how to end these videos. Like 30 seconds ago, when I said boom, I should have just got out of here.